Hey, Dave, you've been in the industry for a long time, and I'm sure there are cliches, myths, half-truths that bug you.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, you know a lot of them?
Yeah.
And I'm sure our viewers have heard some, and some of you may have taken a lot of these half-truths to be gospel.
They become gospel.
Yeah, they become gospel
But no one questions it.
Yeah, people don't question it, and they don't address it. So what we're going to do in this video is talk about the top 10 cliches, myths, half-truths that really stand out to us in this video. So if you're interested, make sure to stay tuned. All right, Dave, so let's start off with a very common one you hear in the shooting industry. Slow is smooth.
Yeah, smooth is fast.
Smooth is fast. What are your initial thoughts?
Well, yeah, there's some half-truth to it, but at the end of the day, slow is still just slow.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. Now, let's talk a little bit about where this came from. So if you guys do the research, it apparently comes from the SEAL teams. But the context is so important. Like anything in the shooting industry or any activity, context matters a lot. And this is a saying that I think kind of has morphed away from its original context.
Sure.
So slow is smooth, smooth is fast is really about kind of overall. Sometimes being slow and methodical will get you to your goal or result and faster than going crazy. And it's kind of like the story. What was that childhood story? The tortoise and the
tortoise and the hare.
Yeah. Kind of the similar thing. But then what happened was you hear people just go on the range go and just slow down.
Slow is smooth, smooth is fast.
Yeah, and your speed will just naturally pick up.
Here's my take on it, right? So it's two things. And on the range, we've both seen this, right? Take a plate rack, for example. Mm-hmm. You'll see a guy that he's blasting a plate rack. And he's missing, and he's all over the place, and he sounds great.
Yeah,
sounds great. If you look at what he's hitting, not that well. The guy that slows down and actually shoots within his limits and shoots the plate rack does much better.
Yeah,
in the long run of times and timing, right?
Uh-huh.
Or the same thing with a plate rack. The guy was like, when you miss, you keep on going. Don't come back and try to hit that plate that you missed. Keep going and then clean it up afterwards. Again, that's where that slow and smooth is fast. But here's my problem with that as a general concept. A car handles very differently at 20 miles an hour versus 120 miles an hour. Mm-hmm. And if you don't know how a car handles at 120 miles an hour, then you're never trained to actually do that. Just like your gun. If you don't know how fast you can rip on your trigger and keep your sights flat, you don't know how to go fast. Absolutely. You get in that cadence of shooting. Everybody has this cadence. Pop, pop. Pop, 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 pop. And they never pass beyond that because they never push themselves outside of that comfort zone of cadence.
And when they do, that's when chaos, can arise.
Yep. And it comes back to slow down.
Yeah. But then it's interesting because I'll say this in classes, if the problem only arises when you are going fast, you can't solve it by going slow because the problem is arising when you're going fast. So you have to go fast and diagnose things in real time. But here's the thing. When I heard that saying, I've hated it from day one. I literally have hated it from day one. And it's not because of even the reasons we're talking about now, although those are reasons that are valid, reasons why it's a half truth. But when anyone who's been to law school will understand this. Or anyone who understands logic. Okay, so let's establish a universal here, all right? So here we have slow does not equal fast. Okay, that's a universal. Does slow equal fast?
No.
It doesn't. Does fast equal slow?
No.
No, it doesn't, okay? That is the universal, okay? Everyone believes that. Now, this is why when I heard this, I thought it was the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard, okay? So we already established that universal that everyone agrees, just like the sky is blue. Right? So we have slow equals smooth. Okay, let's put that down here. Now we have smooth equals fast. Now let's combine those two statements. It would be slow equals smooth equals fast. We already just established a universal that they're not the same. So logically, it makes absolutely no sense. It's ridiculous.
You know how I would look at it, because again, it's a half-truth.
Yeah.
Right? And there's some application to it. I think what I would look at it from the half-truth perspective is, instead of slow, I would look at deliberate and methodical equals efficient. Mm-hmm. you know, and the more efficient you are or something, the cleaner you're going to be, the faster it's going to be, the better it's going to be.
Yeah.
So I think that's where the half-truth portion comes. And I still see where slow is smooth is fast, or methodical becomes efficient.
No, I like that. And it all goes back to, just like we said, it's context too. Remember, so the SEAL teams kind of brought up, but it's kind of a general saying overall, but then all of a sudden it just got warped into shooting, right? So just keep that in mind. That is the first half truth that stands top of mind for us.
All right, guys. So the second one we're going to talk about is crystal clear front sight post, or front sight.
Yeah.
We hear it all the time. And again, there's some half truth to it. I can only speak to my own experiences, right? And teaching a lot of force on force class, a lot of students' remarks, combined with my own experiences, is sometimes when situations arise that put you over 120 beats per minute heart rate, you know, everything starts to, I don't even see the front sight sometimes.
Yeah.
You know, and I will say this, in the competition side of the house, you know, when things start coming off the rails for me, I'm probably not looking at the front sight. But I have to slow down and come back to my front sight to get through a stage. You know, but that happens in real world too.
Yeah.
You know, you ramp it up. You got to learn how to calm yourself back down and get back to the fundamental. You know, if it's not working for you.
Let's talk about both. Like, as already Dave touched on it, like force on force. If the situation or scenario is really fast paced and you're surprised, you're going to be so focused on that threat. And a lot of people, it's a little mind boggling to me, because I hear this remark from those in competition, but competition shooters are usually the ones who really are going after if they can shave off half a second, they're going to do it, right? But here's what I was trying to get at. When people in competition hear people saying that you're not going to see your front sight in a real encounter or anything like that, when you're surprised, they go, you can spend a quarter second, half second to acquire your sights. So I find it interesting, because competition shooters are all about, you know, shaving off time. But at the same time, again, if you put yourself in that scenario, you're so focused on the threat that you're just like, I got to shoot already. Or if not, in that quarter second, half second, I might get shot.
Well, it's also easy to go into a stage and you get to pre-walk the stage. In most cases.
Yeah,
there are a few stages that you shoot cold anymore.
Yeah.
You know, you get to pre-walk it and you get to have your plan. And that's my problem, is my plan never survives contact intact. You know? So I have a plan.
It just goes out the window.
Just me and my trusty sidearm.
Yeah. So going like competition too. So going back to crystal clear front sight. And of course, this is for iron sight shooters. You, in competition, you don't always have to as well. Let's say if you're skilled and you see a very close target, 5 yards, 7 yards, you really don't need a crystal clear front sight to be successful and accurate. You can just have a blurry sight picture, or you might just index off of kind of the back of your gun, or just kind of whatever it is, you're seeing part of your gun. So it's a half truth.
Yeah. Adding to it, I will say that we talk about get training. Go train all the time, right? And for me, what I've noticed in my evolution of training and my evolution of comfort coming back to my front sight, because I know when I'm not on my front sight. I now see it and I recognize it.
Yeah.
And it happens. You know, when I get a force on force engagement with you, sims rounds, like I'm not on my front sight.
Yeah.
You know, and I will slow down and get on my front sight as I start to drive the gun a little harder as the situation starts to develop.
Yeah.
And a lot of that comes from, the more time on training, the more stress inoculation I can do, the better. You know, but people miss, I think, a lot of the stress inoculation. They go through the class, they go through the course, they go through the drill. They don't really take how much learning happens after the drill. You know, think about what happened, think about how do you make it better, and then come back into that drill again, ramping up your stress inoculation. Small case in point, I'm a prolific bow hunter. I love to bow hunt. And early in my days as a bow hunter, I used to get buck fever when I was much younger. I'd pull back on a deer and I would shake. For all the adrenaline, I would shake so badly. You can't keep that sight on your deer. And I started the hogs are huge in Georgia. You know, you hunt them year round. I hunted hogs so much. Like in 1 year, I killed 36 pigs with just my bow. But what I found was the more time I have on live game, you know, and then, you know, when I started switching to deer, I'd pull back on a deer and just calm, smooth, and collect. Because again, I went through that stress inoculation piece. Yeah, hunting hogs. It's kind of the same thing here. I know it's a long-winded way to get to that, but
yeah, no, I completely get it and completely agree.
Yeah.
All right, so let's roll into number 3, and that is, it's a popular one. You'll hear people say, don't cross your legs.
Oh, yeah.
Don't cross your legs. Don't cross your legs. And I think again, it's a half-truth, or some context is important here. So if you think about movement, you're going to cross your legs. If you're moving and shooting, you're going to cross your legs.
I'm trying not to cross my feet.
Yes, there's a huge difference. So crossing your legs, your feet can be still wide apart, but when you cross your feet, that's when you're completely unstable and can fall in your ass, fall in your face.
Or you get caught up in some material on the ground and cause yourself to trip and fall.
Yeah.
You
And so I think that one is a pretty self-explanatory one. It's just that, again, it needs more, there's a cliche, don't cross your legs, don't cross your legs. But it just has to be, further emphasized or discussed more. So consider that too. There's nothing wrong with necessarily crossing your legs. It's crossing your feet that can really put you in danger.
I see this is a big one for, growing up as a young who I was, we used to do some really, really horrible shooting, right? And it's obviously progressed over the years, right? But we used to do on the lateral left and right, you would square off the target and basically do, because it was never cross your leg.
Yeah.
It was taken to the so far of extreme that, well, you certainly don't want to do that in a gunfight either.
Yeah.
But taking lessons from competition shooting, moving efficiently again, moving methodically again, and how that streamlines into fast, quick action.
Yeah.
That's controllable. I think that's where we started to see that start to get indoctrinated, where we're incorporated into our training schedules, styles, and it had a huge impact. It's one of the positives you see where competition does transfer over.
Yeah. Speaking of competition, let's go to number 4 here, and it's a half-truth. That competition shooting will get you killed in the streets.
Yeah, that's a big one.
Yeah, that's a big one.
Yeah.
And it's a half-truth, right? So do you want to start on this, Dave? What are your thoughts?
I'm on both sides of the fence with it. Again, where I usually get, where I usually balk at it is it's, in my opinion, it's some guy who has no competition experience. He's a great,
Or very, very little.
Right. Great tactician. Great, knows his stuff, but he goes to shoot a match and gets his shit pushed in, and of course, the immediate thing to do is debunk it. Oh,
Yeah.
competition will get you killed.
Yeah.
That's not how I really do it in the streets. And I think there's a lot of crossover. There's some reality to it. Hey,
Yeah. And I'll talk about one example. So there absolutely is some truth to that. Offline, we were talking about how I have seen a lot of awesome competition shooters, some of the world's best. What will happen is during dry fire, they will do their shots and then check if they have bullets in their mag. They're completely dry. Then they'll put it back in, then do another dry fire up. They're doing that because competition shooters are always drilling, doing some exercises, and they want to see how much ammo they have. So they have done it so much that it is now ingrained. But here's the thing here. So that's an example of where, yes, you can build a bad training scar. But I also think that when it comes to these training scars, what's important is you have to also train the proper technique or the defensive or tactical application just as much as you're doing competition, because then you'll be able to change hats. Using the example that you mentioned where somebody does a competition, maybe they've only done it once and now they're talking down about competition, they haven't given it its fair share yet, right? So let's take the flip side. Somebody who's done 99% competition and only trains defensively 1%, yeah, they're going to default to some really bad tactics. Yeah. So for you to be able to switch hats, you have to practice the defensive and the competition, kind of like this is what we do at Hyve, right? We're putting videos on both competition and defensive because we see value in both.
Sure.
Absolutely.
Yep.
But you have to do them evenly. If not, you're going to get mixed up.
Yep. Agreed. All right, so let's talk about number 5, Senko.
It's a myth, right? This one's a myth.
This is a myth. Yeah, there's no half-truth to this at all. The myth is when the bullet leaves the barrel, it immediately starts to rise. A bullet has zero loft capability, none. Think about a jet airplane or an airplane wing or a bird's wing, how it's designed, right? It has loft.
Yeah.
Right? A bullet has none of that. Right? It has a ballistic coefficient, which tells you how quickly and efficiently it moves through the wind, but it's immediately acted upon 2 forces when it leaves the barrel. It's acted on by gravity and it's acted on by resistance from the air. And it immediately starts to fall.
Yeah.
You know, so if you were to put that barrel straight
Yeah.
and look at it, you know, it immediately starts to slow down and fall. The reason it has this myth is because we elevate our angle of departure so that it crosses our line of sight for our 0, goes up, and then crosses our line of sight again for our long range 0.
Absolutely. And yeah, you already hit the nail on the head, and that's the reason why a lot of people get confused and think that the bullet rises. It doesn't do it by itself. We're actually making it rise. So if you are unfamiliar with zeroing, the zeroing process, you know, we have some videos on that, but the whole idea is if we want to hit our target, let's say it's really far away, just to exaggerate here, we can't just point the barrel straight, right? Because as Dave mentioned, it's just going to go straight down. We need to compensate, right? So what goes up, what goes down.
Yeah, and I think this myth is propagated a lot by the military. You know, we use the 25-meter 0, you know, in the Army. Right? So point of aim, point of impact at 25 meters essentially equals a 300-meter point of aim, point of impact 0 for the M4. It's a lot more than that, but for generalities is what we're talking about here, right? So it crosses the line at 25 meters, rises, falls back across the line of sight at 300. I think that propagates the bullet rises when it comes out.
Yeah.
Without really fully understanding what we've done to the gun.
So hopefully that clarifies that myth, because you're going to hear that one a lot in the industry. Before we get to number 6, guys, we want to thank Dry Fire Mag for bringing you today's video. If you dry fire a lot and you own a striker fire pistol, you have to check them out. It's going to make your dry fire more realistic, more enjoyable, and it'll really help you master your trigger control. So make sure to check them out in the description below. All right, so number 6, let's talk about pinning the trigger to the rear. What are your thoughts?
I think it's great that it comes right on the backside of the Dry Fire Mag. You know?
Yeah, that's because it doesn't reset the trigger.
Yeah, that is perfect. It's the perfect position for this one. Again, it's a half myth. You know, there's some truth to it.
Yeah, half truth. Yeah.
You know, there's some truth to it. If I'm trying to be precise and I'm trying to make that one round count, and I'm going through the motion of pinning that thing to the rear, waiting for recoil to settle, and not interrupt anything.
Yeah, not taking any chances.
Right, for sure. Yeah, then I'm pinning to the rear.
And that would be, let's say, per precision shooting. We see this, though, a lot in pistol shooting, where I like to say that unless you're shooting something really, really far, you know, again, because like we don't want a variable at all, like any afterthought in our movement to affect the shot. But in any practical application, Dave, this is a question for you. Let's say a threat was 5, 7, 10 yards. Is there any practical application to pinning your trigger to the rear?
Not for me. There's not. I don't see one at all. And what I'm doing, even in my training, what I'm doing is I'm trying to reset on the recoil. You know, as the slides come out, I'm trying to reset that trigger. I'm trying to almost beat it. You know? Yeah. I've actually outran a few triggers. Not very many, but I've outran a few. But that's what I'm trying to do, is be quick on that trigger. And that I completely agree. For our viewers, why is that so important? To run the trigger on reset?
Yeah.
It's economy of motion. You know, it's smooth, it's efficient, and it's deliberate.
And it gets you ready
for that next
shot. Because at 5, 7, 10 yards, that person, right, who knows, maybe the threat wasn't stopped, right? So you're ready to take another shot. So pinning the trigger to the rear it's a half truth, because there are certain situations, but just keep in mind, again, what we're trying to highlight is not that they're wrong. They're just things that need to be addressed. And particularly if you're newer shooters, they take everything they hear from an authority as absolute. So just keep that one in mind.
Pinning to the rear is good for the precision, that slow is smooth is fast piece. But if I need to get my gun into operation right now, it's fast and quick.
You're not going to say that.
Yeah. So here's a half truth. Again, it's there's reasons behind it, right? But again, it's one of the things where no one understands anymore because the nuances aren't being taught. And I think this is where a lot of these half truths come from. I teach you a square, right? And you only remember, instead of handing a square, you round off a little bit of the corners to make it efficient for you.
Yeah.
And then you teach that rounded off piece to Charles, and he rounds off a little bit more. By the time that makes 3 or 4 evolutions, what was initially taught as a square is now being taught as a circle. No one really understands, and I think this is a good one that goes back to why we do the things we do. You know, the details, the devil in details. So heels on the ground. It's a big Marine Corps thing for a lot of my Marine Corps buddies out there. They're really big.
Sorry to cut you off, David. This is when shooting from prone, right?
Shooting from prone.
Okay.
Yep. So precision shooting on the prone. Heels on the ground. Nice and stable position, flat to the earth. And it works great. right? For long range precision, taking your time works great. The reason it's a half truth is if you're assaulting or you're moving quickly or you're breathing heavy, heels to the ground doesn't work. And the reason it doesn't work is while I put my heels to the ground, I put my hips to the ground. As I breathe, I'm putting more movement on my rifle. By kicking this leg up, and when I'm in my position, I kick up, I'm creating a void here to allow my diaphragm to expand. It's minimizing the movement of my barrel, which is helping me, again, shoot accurately. So that's the half truth to it. There's a reason to do it. If you're shooting a known distance range and you're shooting you want precision shooting, you want information from each round you're shooting versus a tactical application where you're assaulting. And you got kit and you got breathing. Those two don't cross.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. On to number 8, and that is the surprise break, which is, there's a time and place for it. For those of you who don't know what I'm talking about, a lot of shooters are taught to pull that trigger, or squeeze the trigger, whatever you want to say here, and kind of let the gun surprise you. You're not really knowing when the gun is going to go off, and that will help you get an accurate shot. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I have real unabridged thoughts on it.
Yeah.
Nigga's a crock of shit. This whole surprise break piece and slowly, because again, you pull the trigger, you squeeze the trigger, you apply rear force. Everybody has put their spin on it to make it sound like they're teaching something new and phantasmical, right? And that's not the case at all.
Yeah.
Point your weapon at the target, align the sights properly, and fire it without screwing it up. That's it.
Yeah. So I completely agree, but I like to say it is kind of a half-truth or context just for brand new shooters, just for beginners. And the reason being is what Dave just said is exactly true. And any really good shooter, competition shooter will tell you that certain times you're not going to be able to go slow, right? In a practical setting, right? Would you go really slow to pull that trigger to get that surprise break? No, you're going to slap that trigger. The key is not to disturb the sights. And I think that for beginners though, that might be required for some people to not disturb the sights, right? They just got to go really slow.
Yeah, I see where the half truth comes in.
Yeah,
you want to remove that person's anticipation of the round.
Yeah,
which is a typical new shooter thing they have to overcome.
Yeah,
that anticipation. They drive it around. They push. They're driving the gun all over the place in anticipation of the recoil. So I get it from that perspective. Going back to the competition side of that, even shooting precision, shooting for the marksmanship unit and shooting, 600 or 1,000 meters. Again, I'm looking for a set of conditions, and once those conditions are met, those environmental conditions, I'm trying to shoot as quickly as I can in those conditions so they don't change on me. You may have 20 minutes to shoot 20 rounds at 1,000 meters or 600 meters, right? You'll see a lot of guys will sit and wait, and then they'll start rolling their bolts or start denting primers the last few minutes. And what they're looking for are conditions to be favorable and consistent. So I can just get on the gun and hammer it.
So like the pinning the trigger half-truth, you're not going to use the surprise break in any kind of practical application.
From an experienced shooter and from being an experienced instructor, I don't want that gun to go off by surprise. I want that fire system to go off when I want it to go off. Not surprise. So that's where for an experience out of the house, I lean away from
the surprise break.
Break.
All right, number 9. This is more of a myth that longer barrels are more accurate than shorter barrels. Let me start off by talking about this in terms of the literal sense here. So part of the reason for this myth might be because everyone agrees if you're shooting iron sights, the longer sight radius typically is going to help you get an accurate shot on target. And so from a literal standpoint, it's not necessarily the longer barrel that does it. It is the longer sight radius because it helps you with your aiming. So if you take it from the literal sense, it isn't that the longer barrel is more accurate than the shorter barrel.
I think that, and you add muzzle velocities into it. If you look at an 18-inch barrel versus a 10.3-inch barrel, they can both shoot accurately out to 600 meters. I've seen it time and again. But look at the trajectory. That 18-inch barrel has a lot higher muzzle velocity, has a flatter trajectory, and you're having a lot better terminal effects at distance. As where that 10.3-inch, to get that distance, really has to point that barrel up, you know. So by the time it gets to where it's going, it's lacking the significant muzzle velocity required to do what that projectile is designed to do on target. So again, it propagates the myth of they're not accurate at distance.
Yeah.
They are. They're just not lethal or as lethal at distance.
And the last half-truth is that, talking about shooting a pistol, where should your trigger finger be placed on the actual trigger? And I'll get specific here. You hear a lot of people go, it's, anywhere from, in the middle of the pad.
The meaty portion.
Yeah, the meaty portion of the, your index finger here, and maybe even touching, this knuckle there, but somewhere in between. Why is this a half-truth, Dave?
Again, it goes back, I think, to teaching new shooters to be consistent, and placement on the trigger certainly adds to inconsistencies.
Yeah.
Too much trigger, pulling the gun away, too little trigger, diving the gun away, so I think the half truth that comes back to, hey, one consistent spot.
Yeah.
So you get straight rearward pressure, not left and right, added to it.
Yeah.
Is where I suspect that's where it comes from.
Uh-huh. And I agree. That makes perfect sense, particularly for a beginner. Help them out, like remove as much variables as you can when beginners first learning. So that will definitely help with the consistency. The reason why one of the major reasons why it is not necessarily true, though, is because everyone's hands are different, the finger sizes, and you do want to pull that trigger straight to the rear, but there's going to be a particular trigger finger placement for everybody that lends itself to pulling straight to the rear more than another position, and it's not going to be the same.
Yeah.
So it's something that you're going to have to explore and experiment with, but it's always shoved down beginners' throats that it's it's somewhere in this meaty area.
Well, it goes back to you have to know the rules before you can bend them, right? So here's the rule, because what we find is you start shooting barricades, or you start getting into alternate body positions when you're shooting. Your overall position starts to erode.
Yeah.
And it's going to have an effect at some point on your trigger where that's at as well. So being cognizant of it, knowing the effect that has and the placement on it, and knowing as you start to erode based on whatever challenges you have to shoot around, just helps you as a senior shooter be more consistent. That's our top 10 for myths, cliches, half-truths. By no means is that all of them, and I'm sure we've glassed over quite a few. So if you have some out there, I'd love to hear them. So we can all talk about them and laugh at them and address them. Yeah, because they're out there.
Let us know in the comments below. And before we go, I want to let you know that we are opening access to our war room again in about a month or two. So if you are interested, make sure to sign up to the wait list. You can get all the details below. The war room is where you have access to all of us, where we've gotten to a point where we can't address everyone's questions. It's just really tough. So if you want direct access, you want answers to questions, and you want to be part of a like-minded community where people are protectors, sheepdogs, people who are just into firearms training, want to get better, make sure to check out the war room out. Anyway, guys, we hope you liked the video. If you haven't subscribed yet to the channel, don't forget to subscribe. See you guys later.
Thanks.